Do you also spend a lot of time measuring things in Adobe XD to align hundreds of different objects because you want to make your design pixel perfect? Well, that time is over because I have found a few features that will do that automatically for you, so you can spend all of your time making cool, creative stuff. Isn't that great? I mean, the whole reason why I use Adobe XD before I go into Elementor is because I can test different designs and make changes much faster, which I explained in my video why you should never start in Elementor but in Adobe XD. But I have to admit, I'm a bit late to the game because these features were already implemented in Adobe XD, but I completely missed them. And I think there are more people that don't know about these features, so that's why I'm making this video. Let me show you what I mean. The first feature has to do with padding. So for example, on a tile like this, you have a background and you have a few elements inside of it. And to align this perfectly, you can click on an element and then hold Option or Alt. And then you can see, for example, that there's 35, 35, 35, but 129 pixels to the bottom. So then you have to measure this size in order to know if all these elements are aligned. So what I would do constantly all the time is measure. So for example, if I wanted to drag this column and make this a bit bigger, then I would also have to click on the outer layer, make that bigger, hold Option again, and then be like 50. Oh, okay, 50, 40, we want 35. Oops, clicked wrong. 35, okay. Almost 1 pixel more. Yes, 35. But with padding, it is much easier. So let's just go back a few steps to this, and now it's still 35. What we're gonna do is we're first gonna group these things. So make a group of this part, and this doesn't have to be a group because it's one element. Now select all of it, and on the right, over here, there should be padding, but that is only visible when you group it again. So make sure to group it, and then you can see the padding feature over here. Click on it, and now Adobe XD will automatically measure it, and it's 35. So let's say that you want to make it 40 on all sides. It will increase, as you can see, or even make it 50. But what's even better is that if you increase the size of an element, then the sides will keep that padding. So you never have to measure that again. And what's also great is that now you can see if there are flaws in your design. Because for example, if you have not aligned it properly, it looks perfectly aligned, but when you click on it, you're gonna see that these numbers are not the same. You can change them on each side if you want to, or you can just click on this first one and then put it on 35. And now if responsive resize is on, you can also just drag the sides over here and this still works. Isn't that great? Another example. So what this is actually a shadow. It's just a linear gradient from transparent to black, which is behind this text, so it's actually readable when you have an image. So let's say that you want to use the padding feature over here. Well, of course you can group everything like this and then use the padding feature, but then it doesn't work because it only uses the top side. So in a situation like this, what you want to do is select these elements and then only select your shadow, because you first want to measure the padding within that block. So now you group this one first, then you click on the padding, and now you can see it's 60 at the top, 30 at the sides. So that is what I want. So now this is a group and this is a background. Now if you want to measure the size from the shadow to the top, you can group them again and click on padding. And now you can change this number over here. So maybe make it 250. What you can also do is use the wave key on your keyboard. If you click on that, you can click and then drag. It's nice. You don't have to mess with the numbers. You can just do it like this and leave it at 230 for example. So the padding within this block will stay the same. So even if you would add another title, as you can see, then this will all scale. What's also great about padding is that when you add new elements, so for example, you want to add another text over here, right? I just hold Alt to make a copy, hold Shift to align it. And for example, read more, something like that. Click over here and then you can see it automatically adjusts no matter how many elements you're gonna add on each side. So that is absolutely great. And where you also wanna use this is in buttons. So what happens a lot of times is that you create a button, for example, like this with rounded corners. Let's give it a color and let's add a text. So let's say that this is your button, it's just a text and a background, and there's 41 pixels on each side, which is not perfect. So let's say you wanna make it 40, right? You measure things with your command. But now with the padding feature, you just select it, you group it, you click on padding, and now these values will stay. So when the text is gonna change, click over here, the button is gonna change as well. Now it stays at the left because this text is left aligned, but it also works in middle align. Click over here. This will save you a lot of time measuring things. So I hope you can see that just the padding feature alone will save you a lot of time. Okay, now let's go to the stacking feature. And stacking is very powerful as well, and especially when you combine it with padding. But let's just first focus on stacking. So stacking is essentially Adobe XD trying to understand what items are in a row horizontally or vertically. So the simplest example is with a menu. So you have your menu over here, you have a few items over here, and you measured everything. So for example, 40 pixels between. Oh, oops, this one, okay, and this one like this. I always use the arrow keys and sometimes shift to go up or down 10 pixels, but I always use to measure things like this. But then, if something changes in your menu, for example, the client wants service instead of services, then it's not aligned anymore. So with stacking, you can just select all of them by holding Shift, group it, stack it, and then automatically Adobe XD sees that there is 40 pixels of spacing between the elements. And if you have not aligned it properly, so for example, let's go back a step and this one is just a pixel off, and you group it, you will not see a number over here because you have not aligned it properly. So then you can just type in 40 over here and it will align it. But because it will keep that distance in the same way as padding does, when you change something over here, then the whole menu will change because it will keep that 40 pixels of spacing. And this is great for making changes, for example, our surfaces or something like that. But also when you add another element. So let's say that you want to add another page. Well, if you just click on About, you click on Command D or right click and then, oh, it's not even over here. Okay, you can comment or control and then D. And then it will make a duplicate and you can change this. So for example, contact. You see, and then it will automatically move. And because Adobe XD now knows that you want 40 pixels in between, you can also switch positions. So contact, let's say that this button wasn't here, right? So you want contact at the end. You can click on it, just drag it and see how that works. That's nice, because without this feature, you would always have to measure it. You can even select all of them and right align them. So let's say that I want to change this, then everything will move to the left, which is what you want for a menu like this. Isn't that beautiful? I think it is. This also works, for example, with a simple list like this that is now just 3 separate icons, SVG icons. And let's say that you want to add another icon, for example, the YouTube icon like this, but you want it to be in between LinkedIn and Instagram. Well, normally you just have to click and drag and click. Now you just select all of them, Command G to group, right? Or right click and then click on group. Then turn on the stacking. It sees that there's 20 pixels in between. Now I need to get that YouTube inside of it. So you need to Command X or cut it. Make sure that you are inside over here. Click over here and then click on Command V or right click paste. And then you only have to align it vertically, but now horizontally, it will snap. No matter what you do over here, it will snap in this position. And again, you can still change the order. What you can also do, which is great, is change the spacing between, because maybe your client thinks that this is a little bit too small. Well, you can simply change it over here. So for example, change it to 30 and that will change the space between, but you can also use a shortcut, which is what I always prefer. So you can click the wave icon like this. You can click and drag, but that will only change one place. So if you click that wave icon and you hold Shift, you can do it for the whole list. So that's great. So let's put it on 25. So here we have used a stack, but now we can use another stack for this whole section. So let's just do that. Select all of it. Make sure always group it first. click on stacking, there's 20 pixels between this, as you can see over here, and this. It's a little bit too small, so we click over here, we hold the wave icon, hold shift, and then change it to 30. It's great. And again, you can add something, for example, this button. Just make sure to cut it like this. Make sure you're inside the group and paste it. And then it will snap in position. This is not a good place for a button, but you get the point. What you can see over here, by the way, is a preview of what's coming up. There's a video series about this website. But what I want to show here is that you can have different levels of stacks. For a website like this, you want to also be consistent with the spacing you use between your sections. This is also great when you're working with Elementor, because if you, for example, always have, let's say, 1/30 of spacing between the main sections, then you can do 130 divided by 2, so then you know that you want 65 padding on the top and padding on the bottom in your main sections or containers in Elementor. So for a website like this, what I've done is I've divided it into sections. So this is a section, right? Because it's a custom design. We don't want that spacing over here because this is more custom, but we want the same spacing over here, as over here, as over here, and over here. This is a group. This is a group. This whole thing is a group. This is a group, and this is a group. And now, since this whole page is now a group, you can see that the stacking 130, I can just easily change that. So for example, if I think 120 will be better, click on the wave, click on shift, and then change it. Or just change the numbers over here. Isn't that great? I think it is. So let's now combine the padding and the stacking. Alright, so we have a section like this. I will ungroup it and start over, so we only have layers like this. So first, we want to group the buttons, right? So they are just draggable separate items. You want to click on the padding, right? So when we change the text, then this button will change. But if you also want to keep the spacing between this button and that button, because it's 20, you also need to use stacking. So we're also going to add padding over here. So again, we can then change this if we want. Then we're going to group these two buttons and use stacking. And now it's 20 over here. So now when I change this text, not only is this button gonna change, this button will also move. And when I use center align, because I want these two buttons to center align on the screen, no matter what I do over here, so for example our surfaces, the other button will also move. That's great. So let's go back to our first example over here. So here we've only used the padding feature, as you can see. But now if we're gonna use stacking as well for these three parts, which we haven't grouped, then we can also play with the spacing over here. So I'm gonna group that, then I can use stacking. So let's say I wanna use 30. Or 25. And now not only the sides adjust with padding, but also the elements inside of it. So when I make this text longer, then these items will also move because it wants to keep that 25 pixels in spacing. And also the outside will move because that is done by the padding. I mean, if that is not cool, then I don't know what is. Okay, you can change whatever you want. Make this one bigger. You see, it all moves. It's wonderful. And before I'm gonna show you a more complex design like this, I want to emphasize one more feature, and I've used this already before, and it's the components. This one is not new for me, but I think it's still new for a lot of people, so I want to talk about it a little bit, and then I'm gonna combine all of these features in a design. In a design like this, you will have a lot of the same kind of elements, for example, buttons. Well, this is the same with Elementor. You can style a button and use that same styling on the whole website in the site settings, right? But in Adobe Xd, you actually have more options. In Elementor, you can only style one button, but in Adobe Xd, you can have 3 main buttons. Also what I want in Elementor, by the way. So let's say that you have 3 kind of buttons in your design. So this is a typical situation. One very intense color, one very soft one, almost white color, and one outline button, right? You want to play around with this and make sure that not all of your buttons have the same importance, right, in your design. But then you're gonna copy all of these buttons in your whole design, and you will get a situation like this where you have the same kind of button in many different places. So for example, over here and then over here. So let's just switch to a real project so I can actually show you how this would make my life a lot easier. In this website, it's already 2 years old. I didn't use the component feature only for the social media buttons over here. I don't know why. It's kind of stupid, to be honest, because this website has a lot of different buttons. So you have the green button over here and the black button over there, even a black button over here, but especially the green button, it's used in so many places. So what you want to do is you actually want to just grab one of your buttons, drag them outside of your artboard. Make sure to, of course, use the padding feature before we're going to use the component feature. So align this however you want, for example, 25, 25, and just call it button to make your life easy. All right, so this is your button. Now you click on components, right, and you call it button. And then when you need a button in your design, you're gonna drag this one in. So not just like I did, copy and paste the button. No, drag in your button like this, delete this one, and now this is a copy of the master button over here. How do I know this is the master button? Well, because of this little diamond shaped block, that is the master button, right? And all of the other buttons which don't have that are copies of the main button. Since these are copies, I can change the text over here. Read more. But now I see, oh, oops, this is not aligned perfectly. So I'm gonna go back to my main button. And if you can't find it, just right click and edit main component. And then just make sure that this one is left aligned. So when you have a copy over here, read more. Perfect. So this is what I should have done, because now let's say that I want to change the style of the button. So I want to give it rounded corners of 8. It will change on all the places where I've used the component, but it will not change on all the places I have not used it. So if you even want, you can create 2 buttons. So make sure to ungroup it. Right, make your black button over here and I don't know, call it button 2. And of course, first use padding and then just call it button 2, for example, or button black, whatever. Maybe call this one a button green and then make this a component as well, button black. And then over here, I want to use that same component. It is a copy, so we can change the text, get the magazine. And again, let's say that they want to delete the rounded corners. This will change on the whole website. Now I'm gonna challenge the repeat grid tool, because I was a big fan of the repeat grid tool, but now I'm like, I don't know. So in a design like this, you have a lot of elements that are the same. For example, you have this row of blog posts, right? And this website is a magazine, so it has a lot of different blog posts, right? So here I've used the repeat grid so I can easily drag in images and create another row like the repeat grid tool is supposed to do. But let's say that my client says like, you know what? We don't want the categories on the website. If I'm gonna delete it over here, now it only will change within this repeat grid. So now we can use a combination of components and stacking to make our life easier. So I'm gonna ungroup this, ungroup it again, so we lose the ability to use the repeat grid. But I think the component feature for this is better, because over here, first of all, we can use stacking, right? Group, stack, spacing, fix the spacing, and this is our new design. Now, if we create a component, so we say blog, posts, vertical, because this one is the horizontal. We can now delete all of these ones and then just drag it, just start working like this. And then also do that over here. So I'm gonna ungroup it. I'm gonna use the component instead of the repeat grids. And yes, then I have to copy, I know, but I can still use stacking if I want to align it. 35, right? Because we also use 35 over here. So now I've replaced the whole homepage with the component. Here we have the master, as you can see. And now if we change something, so for example, your client says, you know what? That category wasn't so bad, because this is how clients are. They change their mind. So then you can go in over here, you can paste it, add it again, and then on the whole website, it adds the category again. It's just better. And it's in so many places. You should make this your workflow, right? It's so many places. The sidebar, for example. I've used the sidebar on different pages on the website. Well, oh, actually only 2. But I have not used the component feature. I should just make this a component, right? Sidebar, delete this one, and drag it over here. And then inside over here, we can use stacking. So I hope you can now see how the padding, the stacking and components work together to make your life easier. But you have to start with the right tools. The asset panel is not part of this video. If you guys want me to make a video about that, I will absolutely create one. It's the same story with fonts. It just makes your life so much easier if all of your components are on the side over here. And what I do have to say is that the disadvantage of this method is that the ability to drag in images from a folder, like you can do with repeat grids, as you can see right here, that is a feature that you will miss. But on a website like this, when you have one design that appears in a lot of different places, it's less frustrating to just drag in images just one by one like this. Make sure that you don't add it to your master component, of course, because then it will change everything. But just drag it in one by one. That's less frustrating than having this component on a lot of different pages with the repeat grid tool that you can't really change. With this example, I want to end this video. I didn't use the component feature and the stacking and all of it over here, but for a more complex design like this, it's just so much better. So we are here in the master component. So what I've done is in the button over here, of course, there is padding. So whatever we gonna change over here, that will change. Oh, I need to left align it, as you can see. This is one group that has stacking, but it's not the same number because otherwise this will not look very good. So you can see that it's 15 everywhere, but not over here because that is something that I did not like. It's a little bit too much space. So you don't have to, of course, use the same values. You can also just, if you want to, grab your wave icon and do something custom like this. Yeah, so this is a group with stacking, and I also wanted to use the padding feature on all of these sides, of course, but that was not possible because this white tile was like this, because that white tile had a shadow, right? And you don't want the shadow to stop over here. So what I had to do in this case is add another layer beneath it with a different color so I can clearly see it. Add the shadow onto that one, and then make this a group so I have the options to change the padding over here. So again, if you have a tile like this, which has a shadow which goes from the top to the bottom and it has an image, you need another white layer and a separate layer for your shadow. Otherwise you can't use the padding over here. So this is a more advanced example. And I will be using the repeat grid less, as you can see, because now this master component is also applied to this page, and with the repeat grid that just wasn't possible. So I am really happy that I took some time to understand these features, and I hope that there will be some people in this video who have not seen these features as well. If everybody has seen it, then I am just late to the game. But at least I am really happy with it. But there probably will be some people, right? Because who has time to dive into new features all the time? I mean, I'm running a business here. So, I mean, even I, which has a YouTube channel and needs to spend time figuring out new features, I don't always have the time to figure out the new features. So I think that's why these videos are great. Why am I defending myself? What I also haven't dived into is Adobe Xd plugins. That's something on my to-do list. Because I know there are great plugins for Adobe XD which will make the workflow even faster, so that will be an upcoming video. Let me know if this helped you, and then I hopefully will see you in the next video on Living with Pixels.